It's cold outside today, so I'm going to sit here next to the fire. I'm going to tell you a story about a story that I heard about a long time ago. There was a king one day that he built a kingdom, and it was a fantastic, beautiful place where all sorts of people they love to live, right? And it wasn't he was a responsible man, and so he did make some rules, and basically these rules were do no harm and take no shit. But he specifically made a rule that no one is to move the big rock that was in the pathway of people getting to and from town, right? And every day people struggled with it. Every day people walked, when they were traveling by it, they had to go around this rock, and it created a precarious situation in their day-to-day lives. There was dangers associated to having this rock right in the middle of the pathway. It was a big rock, right? But he specifically said, he's like, nobody is to remove that rock. That is what I've said, is what I've declared, and I am king. But then one day, a little boy was born, and he competed. He went around that rock quite a few times, and he realized that it would make everybody's world a better place if that rock wasn't there, right? And it looks like a really big burden, but he saved up his money, and he worked a little side job here and there in the community, in the kingdom, and he bought himself a hammer and a chisel, and every night he would work on chiseling away on one line of that rock. And every night he made noise. It didn't look like anything was being done. He was just making some decorations because we can't move that rock. The king said so. Right? And who could ever move that rock by themselves? Getting more than one person to disobey the king's orders was proving difficult. And this little boy didn't even know like really what the ramifications could be for disregarding the king's commands. So he took his hammer and he took his chisel, and he thought the people said we can't move that rock because it's too big, right? And so he didn't place a limitation on what he knew how to do. And so he kept chiseling on that rock every day for weeks, for months, and it finally cracked. It broke in half. And the way the rock fell, it was still in the way, but it was easier for people to get past now. And then many people came together and they said, well, if one little boy could make our lives better, then what would happen if we all worked together to make our lives better? Right? And so everybody grabbed the hammers and chisels that were available, and they chiseled away the rock. And they made the pieces so small that it actually made the pathway better, because now they weren't sinking in the mud. The community was able to grow, and people weren't being harmed because the rock wasn't in the way. I try to introduce people to these ideas here at the Apocalyptic Ashram Hawks Haven in a way of, I call it play yoga. pixelated landscape or life shape, and yoga. And what we do is we look at something that we don't like. And there's a lot of places here that um, I don't like the way it looks, right? But I maintain things in a certain way because I already know that I'm capable of creating things that didn't exist before in my life. But there's a lot of people who seem to think that they're unable to change the things in their life, and so they suffer depression and anxiety and stress. And something might be kind of overwhelming. I mean, it might look like a really, really big task. But when we break it into manageable pieces and we start whittling away at what we can do right now, we are taking steps towards creating a solution to a problem that we see. I regularly ask myself, is that where that goes right now? Right? Like this, right here in the middle of the floor. Is that where that goes right now? And then I logically answer myself, well, sure, because it's in front of the fire and it's warming up and it's getting ready to sacrifice itself to keep me warm here. All right, so I'm accepting of that because it's a decomposing inanimate object that is going to serve as fuel for heat. Right? Some things don't make sense. Right? And if something doesn't make sense, then that's when we should recognize our ability and our role as living people, right? We have this ability to think about things and to see, does this make sense? You know, and if it doesn't make sense to us, we need to recognize what are the components of what doesn't make sense, and how do we change that to where it helps us to make sense. And when we look around this world, there's a lot of things that don't make sense, but a lot of these things are hidden. They're hidden from plain sight. There's a lot of homeless people who aren't sleeping on the streets. They're sleeping in their cars. There's a lot of people that, if there wasn't a government subsidized rent going to a corporate landlord, they would be homeless, right? Even though maybe over 10 years, maybe $100,000 has been spent on providing that person shelter, but they still don't own it. So if they fail to make a payment, they are made homeless. And there's a lot of other people who are living in big, giant houses that they don't own. The bank owns it. And if something happens to the monetary supply or their job, right, their income, then they become homeless. But yet castles have stood for thousands of years so far. And once you take a rock and you put some cement or mortar in between that and other rocks, and you stack them up in a way, they become a castle, right? Or a small one could just be a small house that isn't likely to burn. It isn't likely to be washed away with some water or eaten by insects. It's less likely for wind to knock it down. It's easier to heat in the winter and easier to cool in the summer. And once you stack that rock up, you probably won't ever have to move it again because it's in the right place. What can you see in your world every day of things that aren't in the right place? Are the things in your life the way you want to see them? Or have you become numb to what you dreamed as a child was possible for your life. Because these things are still possible. All it takes is putting your energy in a direction of solving problems rather than maintaining them.